Good morning. Very conscious that we're between you and morning tea, but other than that, I just want to share a little bit about how I came to be a unionist. So you can imagine many years ago, and we're talking probably the 80s, just to put it into context, I used to work as a meat worker at an abattoir. So as a young man, not really understanding what was going on, we had a couple of roles going and we were given particular tasks to do. The bosses came through and said, okay, you come with me, we're going to go do this work. And they really took advantage of what we didn't know. As part of that, the roles that we had, and I'm not going to go into it because we do want to have more, but as part of that, yeah, we did the work, but it got known through the different chains, which is the way we talk. We had a meat, lamb chain, mutton chain, beef chain. So there's a couple of different ways that we work. And we had one of our delegates come to us and go, hey, boy, what's going on? What's happening? Once he really understood what had been happening, he then went over to one of the bosses and they literally laughed. Said, no, this is what we're going to do. By lunchtime, we walked offside. And it was fantastic as a young man to see the solidarity come around. And at that stage, I hadn't been a member of the union, but they thought it was serious enough the way that we were being treated. They really wanted to send a message to McPeak, which is the organisation at the time. So much so that it actually got around to the other abattoirs within New South Wales. And it was such a great feeling to understand that people have got your back, that we can achieve things together. But as a young man on my own, or as a group of young men on our own, we had no idea. And we really needed to be guided and assisted in understanding what could be achieved. So when I came to CBUS, Industry Super, fantastic, thank you, Julie. In terms of what that is, it was a no-brainer for me. So I came along, yep, as I joined CBUS, I joined the union because that was the one that was put forward to me. I went, fantastic. I came along and I met a couple of the delegates, and it made further sense. And I became a delegate and met Nicole and found out that there's family history to meat working, which is also very interesting. So part of that, and it was, I must admit, a surprise. And one of the reasons I got drawn to CBUS to take a role was my history. As I mentioned, I've been blue collar in the meatworks. I've also done some time as electrical contracting, so within construction, and I really loved the approach and what they stood for. So joining CBUS, it was a surprise that when we got a new boss come in, new CEO, and he started to implement his own team, including the head of P&C, that they had a different approach to what was expected. And the first taste of that was they wanted to remove some of the entitlements that we had. And that was around our health and well-being. And we went, hang on, that's not right. And they literally landed it on us. And it took me right back to that moment when they laughed at us back in the 80s. Said, no, we're going to do this. Well, we galvanized and we got a whole movement behind that. And then that led into, because of COVID, we were behind in our negotiations in terms of having the nerve and where everything was. But then we said, okay, we can see what's going to happen. We really need to get behind this. And part of that, they then wanted to divide us. They openly started working on carving out a part of the organisation on their own. And that happened to be our investments. For a superannuation fund, a little bit important. So they really wanted to make sure that they were starting to treat them differently, and they also wanted to carve out other parts of the organisation as well. And the simple idea that we are stronger when we stand united, the simple idea that we can achieve amazing things when we recognise that we have more in common with each other than we have in differences. So whether you be front counter or you're responsible for responsible investing, we are still working for a common goal. What is it? Why are we here doing what we're doing? I happen to work in cybersecurity. Nothing to do with necessarily on the front line, but I work with a lot of the different teams in what they need to do to make that work. So again, what are we doing as a collective, working together to achieve more? So that's the powerful principle that motivates and I assume unites us all here today. So because of that solidarity, that we continue to strive to do those actions, and I'm a very affirmative action sort of guy. What are we doing to take that forward? What can we do together to assist each other? And the conversation we had yesterday, wherever Gabby is, listening to her story and saying, what can we do to help? So we experienced the power of being a union at CBUS when the boss tried to divide us. And during that campaign for the agreement, it resulted in that they actually backtracked on that. And there's a whole project that a lot of the people didn't realise, but funnily enough, in my role, I needed to know, where they were trying to carve out part of the organisation entirely. However, at the end of the day, they're now all covered under the agreement, and we actually have something which we were very proud of achieving at the time. But having heard a few of the stories last night, I'm looking forward to hearing more because we're about to start our journey again. So this is the last of our 3 years now.
Morning, everyone. Love a microphone. I love a speech. I'm Yvette-Maree. I've been a union rep for 14, 15 years collectively. Originally as an ANZ FSU president before coming over to ME Bank later on. I was asked to talk about my union story, and I have a lot of stories, and I've been around a long time as a unit. So I had to really figure out a story that would resonate about solidarity. And I kept coming around to this particular one when I was a teenager. It's a while ago now. So I come from a strong blue collar union and Labor voting family. There was absolutely no way they were going to vote ever like Liberals. So it was always Labor. I remember specifically when I was a teenager and it was exam time and there was the transport strikes and we had to walk to school. And I know that doesn't sound like a big deal, but when it's an hour and a half from home, it is a big deal, especially when you just got to go to school for a couple of hours, do your exam, come home. We all were complaining about it. So I remember I was complaining to my father about it around the dinner table. And I said, I just, because it impacted me particularly, it wasn't just something on the news. And he actually said, you know what, I'm going to pick you up tomorrow morning. I'm going to take you to school. We're going to talk about this. All right, you roll your eyes. So when he picked me up, he sat me down and it was a swing. And he would talk about why the strike was happening on the very first day, why they were striking, why it was impacting their families, that it was actually going to impact their, hours of work, their take-home pay. It was actually going to affect them on a daily basis. And so then you really think about that because then it humanizes it. It's not a story on the newspaper. So on the first day, and I went into school and everyone was complaining about it, waiting for our exam. And I found myself actually talking to them about it. The very second day that happened, less people were grumbling about it because we all then understood it. Not necessarily agreed with it, still grumbled because everybody's still walking school. And on the third day, I don't actually recall us ever really talking about it at that point. So in talking about solidarity, I was thinking about that particular impact. It impacted me because I had to walk to school. It's not a big deal, right? But it impacted them just so very much. And I remember in the car, my father actually saying to me, never let anyone tell you you are not worth anything, my girl. So that was really powerful too, because we talk about as a human, sorry, I've gone off script. We talk about a human in our humanity, what we're worth, but not the dollar value of what we do every day in our job. And we should, especially as women, we should never think that we're less than. So just to finish off, before I hand over to Izzy. So my particular group, ME Bank, was recently purchased by Bank of Queensland. I never say it's recent now, but it was purchased. We were a union bank being purchased by a non-union bank. So it's interesting. And during our recent EA negotiations, our employer tried to remove or reduce our good conditions that we fought hard for when we were ME Bank. Bank of Queensland, run up script. I do this. So Bank of Queensland, the workers there were kind of used to not having a really great deal. ME Bank workers were used to having somewhat negotiations. Nothing was ever easy, right? So we had to fight for it nonetheless, but it was an easier job of it than what it was this time around, that's for sure. And in fact, one of the flyers that the FSU put out in the very first conversations with the staff was cuts, cuts, cuts. It was almost like it was just cut in half. I remember thinking in my head, isn't this like a sales ad? Slashed 50% off. So that's how that felt. So we fought hard to get the bank to move on their position. And Bank of Queensland decided to put out their vote regardless. And they're like, we're enough of you. We reckon we're going to put it out. Wasn't like that, as Alex would say, but that's where we were at. And they firmly believed it was going to pass. They thought they had it in the bag. And they were surprised it didn't. The employees stood together in solidarity and voted in a large majority to resoundingly say no. That was a huge win. This is the power of that statement. This outcome saw VOC improve its offer significantly. And a few weeks ago, we secured a new collective agreement where we now have pay rises that cover 90% of the staff at the bank. We kept our redundancy entitlements and we secured our work from home proposal. Another big win for us is that we grew our membership by 12%. Doesn't sound like a big number, but it's good for us, I'm telling you. It's great. In no small part from the FSU workers, the staff and the reps. And retain more members than we have before, which has put us in a good position for growth going forward. This was only possible because we stood united and we looked out for each other. There is so much power in coming together. So one in all. I will now pass you over.
I have notes across 4 things, so bear with me. So I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the beautiful lands that we're on here today, the Dja Dja Wurrung people. As the oldest living culture, their connection to land, water and sea is far beyond anything that I can comprehend. And so I think it's very, very important that we listen to their voice. I'd like to acknowledge their elders past and present and extend my acknowledgements to any Torres Strait Islander or Aboriginal people here today. So I don't have a fancy union story. I joined in my first week at the bank when the organizer showed up to our induction, and of the 10 people there, I was the only person that I named down and signed for. And I didn't understand why no one else was signing up. I didn't come from a unionist household, but both my parents were union members. It was just a bit of a BAU thing for me. So it would be another 2 years until I became a rep, and then another year or two after that until I started to become active. I didn't become active finally because I made that decision to become active, and I wasn't not active earlier because I didn't want to be, but someone actually just asked me. And that was all it took. One of the organizers came to my office and said, "Hey, do you want to be a bit more involved?" I went, "Yeah, right." Might as well. Got nothing else better to do. Banking. I'm pretty lazy, right? So I've had my script written for me today. I'm one of the most laziest people. But us lazy people do add value to the union, I think. So they've been around for 10 years now. So don't be afraid to ask people, "Hey, do you want to get involved?" Because they might actually want to get involved. So for those in Victoria, you might know this solidarity statement. It's something that we always read at Trades Hall. And I'm very, very honoured to be able to talk to this morning because it does make me cry when we read it at Trades Hall, but I'm not going to cry today. So here's my speech someone wrote to me, and thank you to whoever wrote this for me. I'm a proud union rep. I've been involved in many campaigns across the Westpac Group, the FSU and Trades Hall. And most recently, I've been a member of the National Congress Steering Committee, which has helped shape the agenda for today. We have yoga at 6:30 tomorrow morning in the, I don't know, I didn't plan 6:30 either, in the Banksia room. Okay. So the values in this statement apply to us and the way that we treat each other and the behaviours that we show towards each other. As trade unionists, we are fighting for our workplaces to be free from all forms of harassment, inappropriate behaviour, bullying and sexual harassment and intimidation. And we hope that you will display these higher standards at union events and at our National Congress here. The FSU is committed to ensuring all of its gatherings, including meetings, functions and events, are free from all forms of harassment. And attendees have the right to be safe and respected. And so we're asking that everyone, our officials, our delegates, our staff, all people who attend this Congress act in accordance with these values. So if any time over the next 3 days, you need to talk to someone about behaviours that you've seen that don't meet our standards, the wonderful Wendy Street's right here. Give us a wave, Wendy, for those at the back. Come and have a chat with her. You're not me. At any Victorian Trades Hall event, we do read this out. So I ask you all to read this with me up now. Oh, yeah, get up. Make yourself comfortable.
And don't forget, for the last 2 words, we want to see how far we can make it through the entire building.
We are union. We stand united as part of a great movement of workers. Our diversity is our strength. Our solidarity is our power. We respect and take care of each other. Prejudice and discrimination, including misogyny, racism, homophobia, and all other hatred that no place in our movement. We rise together today and every day. We commit ourselves to achieving justice, fairness, equality, and dignity for all of us. Solidarity forever. Thank you.